Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. And today I want to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the shrinking population in Japan and its effect on its market and economy. So, this headline says the housing crisis in the US is flipped upside down in Japan, where each home that's occupied could be next to an empty one by 2033. We all know that in the US there's a shortage in homes, and there's more population growth and more demand for real estate than supply. And people have to really fight for um, to be qualified to rent a property, oftentimes with requirements of very high credit scores, very high deposits, and very high salary that's required to be able to rent something in the US market. Whereas in Japan, it's experiencing the opposite problem, where there's more empty homes than people wanting to rent. And let's explore what is going on right now in Japan. The US housing market suffered from a lack of supply in recent years, but the opposite is the case in Japan, where a shrinking population has sent the number of empty homes soaring. Vacancies in that country have hit almost 9 million, according to data released by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications on April 30th. That's an increase of 500,000 from the prior survey in 2018 and an 80% surge from 20 years ago. It also means a record 13.8% of homes in Japan are now vacant, with the share topping 20% in some rural areas where populations are falling faster. The number includes second homes and others that are vacant for reasons that include the resident working temporarily elsewhere. But the number of abandoned homes also jumped, rising by 360,000 from the 2018 survey to 3.85 million today, or 5.9% of all homes. Coincidentally, the US Census Bureau also released similar data on April 30, and it reported that vacancy rates in the first quarter were 6.6% for rental housing and 0.8% for homeowner housing. Those were little changed from a year ago. The vacancy rates from Japan are in line with an earlier report from the Nomura Research Institute, which predicted in 2017 that the vacancy rate could exceed 30.4% by 2033 if nothing is done about it. Having a third of houses vacant means that on average, each home would have a vacant house next door. Just imagine how insane the problem is getting in Japan. 1 in every 3 houses will become vacant. So imagine 3 houses in a row where a vacant one in the middle, meaning the other 2 that are occupied are next to an empty house. Unoccupied houses become sites for trash dumping, are susceptible to collapse, and attract suspicious persons, Nomura added. Having 30% of house vacant is certainly not desirable from the perspective of safety and disaster prevention. The best solution would be to increase Japan's population, or at least halt its decline, it said, while acknowledging that would be difficult and take a long time. The population has been in decline for years, and the most recent count in 2022 showed its shrink by more than 800,000 from the prior year to 125.4 million. Meanwhile, birth rate has hit record lows, and the number of children has fallen for 43 consecutive years. Other opinions include removing vacant homes, limiting the construction of new ones, and converting them to non-residential properties. The government has tried to tackle the problem by allowing local authorities to demolish homes at risk of collapse if improvements aren't made or issue warnings to owners of mismanaged properties. But those efforts have seen limited success. Tax policies also made it cheaper to keep some homes empty than to demolish them. And other properties are stuck in red tape when record keeping obscure ownership. Many foreigners see bargains to be had in Japan's housing market, but the high costs of renovation and language barriers will likely prevent many from being sold that way. The truth is, most of these homes are not going to be sold to foreigners, or that the amount of administrative work and the rules behind it are not something easy for somebody who doesn't speak Japanese. They are not going to be able to get these houses for cheap. So there you have it, guys. This is the current situation that's happening in Japan. I would imagine that the housing price in these areas are going down as well. Remember that housing price is almost completely dependent on location. So in places like in Tokyo and other desirable cities and locations, I'm sure the price is not gonna fall too much or at all. Only in these rural areas that nobody wanna live in, you would see such level of vacancy. Even though the population in Japan is declining, but I think in the big cities, there will still be consistent inflow of people going to these big cities and drive up demand for its real estate. So, maybe it's a good retirement option for people that want to live in Japan for cheap, but most likely these homes will be sitting vacant. Similarly, we will most likely see the same problems happening throughout the world in other countries as well. For example, China is experiencing record low birth rate and a very high vacancy and housing inventory. As China's population continue to age and the birth rate continues to decline, it's gonna have the same problem as Japan. But it's just one example. There are many other countries that's just like Japan, and will experience the same problems. The US is experiencing the opposite problem because there's an artificial constraint on its housing supply. The developers have to follow many rules and they can't build as effectively as the developers in other countries. So there's not enough new inventory on the market. On the other hand, the US is an immigrant country. That means even if it has a very low birth rate, it will still have positive population surplus versus population decline in other countries, because people will always want to go to the US for work and other opportunities. That means the US will consistently have supply and inflow of new immigrants. These immigrants need places to live, and they will be buying up the available inventories on the market whenever they can afford to. So don't forget about that. I think, if you want to understand real estate well, you have to understand both the supply and demand side. And in the US, the supply is very low and the demand is very high. And that's why the US is having a housing affordability crisis. And I don't think it's gonna get better anytime soon unless the US address the development policies and make it easier for the developers to build more units, or it could make the immigration policies more strict and decrease the inflow of the immigrants. But neither of these are going to happen, in my opinion. So I think the real estate market in the US is going to continue to remain unaffordable. And yeah, this is my take on this interesting piece of news. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, please comment down below and let me know. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. I will see you in my next video.